If you're a digital photographer, then your choice of raw editor is arguably just as important as your choice of camera and lens. Raw files are effectively digital negatives, and in order to get the most out of those files and to achieve the best outcomes for processing your photographs, you need software that could make the most of every byte of color and every bit of brightness data. Traditionally, the software that most photographers chose for that purpose was either one of Adobe's, or either Lightroom or Photoshop/Camera Raw, or Capture One. But those venerable old apps received some much needed competition at the more serious end of the scene when DxO Labs first released Photolab back in 2017. I was late to the DxO party when I tested Photolab 6 a couple of years ago. I discovered an industry-best raw demosaicing engine backed by exhaustive camera and lens profiles and the best AI denoising tool on the market. Now, DxO have unveiled Photolab 8. Have they addressed the feature gaps? Does it still have the best AI denoising? Is this, my photographic chums, the app you should entrust your most precious raw files to? Yeah, I think it is. Fair warning, this is an in-depth review, so feel free to use the chapter shortcuts below to skip to the sections you're most interested in. And if you're in a massive hurry, here's the TLDR going from version 7 to 8. AI denoising has improved, and yes, it's still the best there is. No, they have not added AI Mask, but there is a useful new Hue Mask tool. No, there's no generative AI tools in there. There haven't been any substantial changes to the asset management or interface. This review is focused on the updates in the point release. If you'd like to know about all the other stuff, then I suggest you check out my review of Photolab 7, which I'll link to up there. And now, if you permit me, we'll take a closer look at Photolab 8 and all that this latest version has to offer. As in previous versions, Photolab has a clean and efficient triple pane interface with File Manager on the left, Assets and Previews in the middle, and EXIF keywords and metadata on the right. You can simply browse folders of photos, or you can index them so that they get added to the database. The main advantage of indexing them is that you can then search on metadata such as ISO, camera or aperture, or file data such as a timestamp. Indexing also partially gets around one of the annoying features of Photolab, which is its stubborn inability to display the contents of subfolders. That database-driven design also means that you can group photos together with projects, which is the equivalent of albums in Lightroom or collections in Capture One. In terms of that asset management, DxO most closely resembles Capture One, with an emphasis on the essential tools such as search and filtering, rather than the kitchen sink approach of Lightroom. The Asset Manager is largely unchanged since version 7. It's not to say that's a bad thing. I've always found it works well, it's efficient, it's quick, and everything is clearly laid out. On the left, you have your standard file browser. On the middle here, you have your tiles, and on the right, you have metadata and keyword information for the photo you have selected at the time. You can select on any image and view the basic EXIF data. You can also hover over an image and a image properties box will appear, giving you the basic EXIF information for that photograph. Like everything else in DxO software, the approach to asset management is to provide you with a smaller subset of more refined tools rather than some NASA-grade, overcomplicated suite that sacrifices usability for feature count. One of the things I didn't like about Photolab 7 was the titchy little preview window you used to get for the denoising, a tiny little window over here on the right-hand side. DxO have addressed that in this latest version, and you now get a loop which you can move around the screen to zoom in, and you get a full preview of the effects that you've applied in the sliders. And I can click on my shot here and hit the S key, or I can click on this little icon up the top, I can see what my image looks like with the denoising applied. And so for instance, if I turn this off, it updates and I can see how it is before, whether it's worth applying it. Can position this loupe anywhere I'm on the screen, and I can change the magnification to really sort of zoom in on these details and see exactly what something like the lens softness compensation tool is doing to my photograph. All right, so let's talk about actually editing a photo now. By default, all the sliders on the right side of the screen, but you can drag them to the left if you prefer, or set them to float in the middle. Sliders are broken down into light, color, detail, geometry, effects, and local adjustments. And you can disable any tools you never use so that they don't clutter your edit screen. Most of those sliders are common to all RAW editors, but there are some specialized DxO tools as well, such as Smart Lighting and Clearview Plus. Smart Lighting quickly and simply balances out over and underexposed portions of a photo, and Clearview Plus is an advanced dehazing tool. So this kind of photo represents one of the best use cases for the Smart Lighting tool. What we got here is a very backlit scene with some heavy shadow down on the beach, and I will go over to the Smart Lighting slider and drag it over to the right. Now, do keep your eyes on the highlights up at the top of the screen there, and also the shadow area, because the trick with this is to get a smooth gradation between those very bright areas at the top of the screen and the very dark areas at the bottom. So let's bring it up. I'm going to take it almost all the way to the right in this case, and then I'm going to take my finger off the side of there at 88%. And you can see we've drawn out all the shadow area. We can now see these figures on the beach more clearly, but notice also that it hasn't overexposed the sunshine, and we have a beautiful soft gradation of light falling across the image. The first of the new features in this latest version of Photolab is in the Light tab's Tone Curve tool. Previously, changes to the tone curve would result in undesirable changes to saturation. Now though, there is a Luma curve option which enables you to change luminosity values and therefore contrast at any point on the light spectrum without adversely affecting saturation. As you can see from this image, the end result is a much more natural looking edit with excellent saturation levels. The Tone Picker tool is something that's been in Lightroom and other editors for some time now. It's great to see it implemented in Photolab because it's much more convenient than trying to guess the right spot on the curve. The rest of the tools in the Light panel are unchanged, but if you're new to Photolab, I'm going to call your attention to the little wand icons next to some of the sliders, which applies optimized settings. I'm not sure whether this uses machine learning or not, but it's usually spot on. Moving on to the color tab, and the big new feature here is a calibrated color profile tool. I'm a landscape photographer, and so this isn't much use to me, but it enables you to create a custom color profile by photographing a standard color correction chart at the time of the shoot. Photolab then uses to set the correct color values. If you shoot product or portrait photography, then this is an efficient way of ensuring that all your colors are displaying and or printing correctly. The rest of the tools in this color tab are unchanged, and that's not a bad thing because they're already excellent. I love editing photos using the DxO wide gamut color space, which does a far superior job of converting that raw sensor data than Lightroom does. The HSL tool remains one of my favorite color correction tools in any photo editor, enabling you to quickly and intuitively change a color or range of colors to a different hue, saturation, vibrancy, or luminance level. So that's the light and color tabs, but the big changes are to be found in the details tab, because that's where you'll find the new Deep Prime XD2S AI denoising algorithm and the upgraded lens softness compensation tool. In my testing, I found that the Deep Prime XD2 algorithm created by DxO provides the best noise removal and detail retention of any denoising app on the market. In recent years, Adobe have upped their game when it comes to denoising, And I found that the Enhance tool in Lightroom, which combines denoising with raw detail enhancement, delivers excellent results. However, DxO have pushed this AI technology even further for Photolab 8, which now includes the brand new XD2S algorithm. I put my tried and tested batch of high ISO photos through the algorithm, and I was consistently blown away by the incredible noise removal and, just as importantly, detail retention. Here's a closer look at just one of my test samples. Directly comparing denoising apps is notoriously difficult because, of course, they all have different settings. And so what I have done in the past and what I did on this occasion was I created all sorts of test shots and I output at different levels of denoising intensity until I reached a point where that photograph was losing too much detail. I did that for Topaz Photo AI and Adobe Lightroom and for DxO Photolab 8. First cab off the rank here is Topaz Photo AI. I would draw your attention to Topaz's latticework grid that is added to my photograph here. I hope you can see that if I zoom in. Can you see these squares? I don't know why it does it to my Fujifilm X-T4 RAWs, but it does. All of these photographs are straight from the raw, no interpolation to TIFF, no baked in details. If we zoom right in on this, we can see it's done a nice job tidying up the background. This is a very high ISO image. We've got some long grain here. Let's have a look now at Lightroom, and I prefer the denoising it's done on the background detail here. I would also call your attention to the fact that it has better detail retention on this bird. Here's Topaz, quite blurry, and it did in fact apply some sharpening using the automatic control in Photo AI. Now let's have a look at DxO Photolab 8. Don't worry too much about the difference in the colors here. These are just default settings, so I'm not worried about that. It's just noise removal. As you can see in the background here, we have this buttery smooth, beautiful, fully denoised background using this latest Deep Prime algorithm. Notice also the incredible detail retention in this bird. Compare and contrast Photolab with Photo AI. It's like night and day, isn't it? I mean, this is beautiful. Again, don't stress about the colors because Topaz was working from the raw, so I didn't do any processing, but out of the box, Topaz is applying some color correction. That's why the colors are more vibrant. So don't stress about that. But look at the detail and look at the denoising. Photo AI, Photolab. Let me tell you, I've been driving myself nuts, flicking backwards and forwards between my test shots, comparing these denoising tools. And I mean, no doubt that DxO is still the best. During my testing, I used Canon, Sony, Fuji, and DJI RAW files to test this software. I found that Topaz did better with Sony shots than Fuji shots, that Lightroom did better with Canon than DJI, and the Photolab was just consistently excellent across the board. I think what sets Deep Prime XD2S ahead of the competition is firstly that consistency, but secondly, its ability to vanquish noise while not just retaining, but actually enhancing detail. Shots just look more natural in Photolab and lack that digitized and over-processed sheen that you often get in other apps. In particular, I'm pleased that there's no AI face recovery because that often makes people look like Lego figurines. So that's the denoising. Let's talk about the improved lens softness correction. And I must admit, I didn't pay much attention to this in the old marketing blurb that DxO sent out with the app. Having tested it, I'm pretty sure it's my favorite update in this point release. In my testing, I found that the new lens softness correction tool applied natural looking sharpness to my images without any distracting haloing or fringing. I found actually that it was particularly effective on my drone photos. I have this shot which I took with my Mavic 2 Pro drone, and I've output this image twice from Photolab. Once with the lens softness correction applied and once with it disabled. And I'm going to show you kind of before and after. So what we'll do is we'll zoom in and we'll look at some of the details. So let's zoom in, for instance, on these people. So this is the uncorrected image. If I now disable this layer, there's the corrected version. Before, kind of a blurry kind of looking mess. We've got ill-defined people down here, and then with it enabled, we have these beautifully defined halo-free people. Let's zoom out a bit and go to another part of the image. What about these headlands in the distance? So that's what they look like uncorrected with the lens softness not applied, and here's what they look like with it enabled. Beautiful, crisp outlines on the horizon. I've got a layer mask on here so we can kind of do one of those before and after, get better illustrate what's going on. So let me enable this layer mask, and I will move it and you'll see the difference. So look at the difference on the left of the screen, uncorrected, on the right, corrected. All camera lenses have a sweet spot where the image is at its most crisp, and they all lose varying degrees of sharpness towards the edges of the frame. Thanks to DxO's work testing so many lenses, this tool knows precisely how each lens degrades across the entire frame, and it compensates for it, such that it applies sharpening effects where it's most needed and not where it's not needed at all. Settings are chosen automatically, but you can tweak these with the sliders if you think it's pushing things too far. And just to be clear, there are occasions when it does push things too far, and regions of the image appear a little over-sharpened. My advice is to always zoom in, pixel peep complicated regions of your photograph, and dial back the strength if need be. In order to get the most out of your photograph, you should of course use localized edits whenever possible. And that means using masks. For a long time, it used to bother me that DxO stubbornly refused to adopt any kind of AI masking, but slowly but surely have actually started coming around to their way of thinking. There are now 7 mask types in Photolab: control point, control line, graduated, luminosity, auto brush, and brush, all in the previous version, but now there's also a new one, the Hue Mask. This mask type does exactly what it says on the tin. It enables you to mask regions of your photograph by color. In Photolab, masks are located in the Local Adjustments tab. Open that up and we'll find this new mask, the Hue Mask. To use this, you simply select the eyedropper and click on the hue or the shade of color that you wish to mask out. As you can see from the red mask indicator here, it selected all similar kind of orangey tones. You can see the color palette is selected down here, and you can finesse the selection by dragging these little control tabs in or out, or using the number selectors down here for very precise control. Let's say we wanted to warm up the skies a little bit. I'll come down to the color temperature slider, let's bring that up and just warm up that sky slightly. As you can see, where it was opaque, we've got a nice smooth fall off in shades. If I wanted to remove portions of this mask, say for instance I wanted to remove the water from being warmed up for some reason, I can click on the eraser, grab the eraser brush, make it nice and big, and just paint out those portions of the mask that I do not wish to be affected. And as you can see now, we've just got the sky being affected. There's nothing as advanced as Lightroom's add, subtract, and intersect tools in Photolab's masking, but with some practice, you can create nuanced masks that target the regions of the photograph you're after. The way I see it, photo editor apps now fall into one of 2 categories. There's the AI with everything editor, i.e. Photoshop, Lightroom, On One, Luminar Neo, and to a lesser extent Capture One. And then there's the traditional editor, i.e. Affinity Photo, Darktable, and yes, Photolab, in which AI is either non-existent or used only sparingly. DxO clearly have no issue with developing AI tools, since their denoising algorithms are the best on the market, but they have doggedly refused to jump on the AI masking bandwagon or the generative AI trend. Photolab encourages photographers to take a bit of time with their edits and to embrace traditional digital post-processing techniques, and in doing so, it helps to deliver more nuanced results. There were high expectations for this point release, And there will probably be some criticism of the upgrades that DxO have chosen to include. But as far as I can see, the company simply understands their market. They're not chasing the instant fix crowd that are happy to let the computer make all the decisions. Instead, they're pitching their app at photographic purists who simply want to bring the best out of their photos, not utterly transform them. That new XD2S algorithm is hands down the best I've ever used, delivering pristine noise removal across a variety of raw file types with best-in-class detail retention. I've included my sample images linked below so you can pixel peep them for yourself. DxO's lens profiles, deployed in the Softness correction tool, deliver beautifully tuned sharpening results to images without the fringe or halo issues you get in other apps. The new Loupe tool is awesome and enables you to view the results of AI denoising and other corrections on a live image, something you can't even do in Adobe Lightroom. When it comes to masking, I've come to accept DxO's old school approach, but now that the app has both hue and luminosity masking, it would be nice to see them introduce the add, subtract and intersect functionality that you can find in Lightroom. The changes to the tone curve are welcome, but it's hardly a unique feature. Lightroom, for instance, has had a targeted adjustment tool and luminance-only curves adjustments since 2022. Photolab is not going to be every photographer's cup of tea, and I strongly suggest that anyone that's new to the app downloads the 30-day trial version first. It's a bit like coriander, that's cilantro, my American friends. You'll either love it or hate it. I also suggest you check out the list of supported camera and lens combinations. I'll put a link in the description because there are some surprising gaps in their library with some well-known cameras going unrepresented. This latest version retails at £209, €229, 274 US dollars or 409 Australian dollars. If you've got version 6 or 7 of Photolab, then the upgrade is half the full price. I'd say there was a pretty clear argument to upgrade from version 6 to version 8, but it's less compelling for versions of 7 and will rest entirely on your interest in the Hue Mask, the better lens softness tool, and that improved denoising. Ultimately, whether Photolab 8 is worth the upgrade or initial investment depends on your workflow, the types of images you typically work with, and your editing philosophy. If you appreciate a more hands-on approach to photo editing and prize image quality above all else, Photolab could be the perfect fit for you. It's akin to switching cars from an automatic transmission back to a manual. You rediscover the nuanced control and the connection to the machine you'd forgotten. Yes, the learning curve might be a bit steeper, but the reward is a finely tuned image and the satisfaction of knowing that you were in the driver's seat for every adjustment. And that will do us for this in-depth review of Photolab 8. Are you a Photolab fan, or has this review piqued your interest enough to download the trial? Do let me know in the comment section below. If you got value from this content, then do please hit the old like button and consider subscribing for more photo, video and drone related content from me. Till the next time, guys. Ta-ta.